Hillary Clinton is once again yielding to the will of the people, continuing a tradition of conceding to the winner. Obviously, I would rather have won, Vice President Walter Mondale said in 1980, but I also see a reason to rejoice, for we are privileged to be a democracy. For a dozen or so hours today, the American people quietly wielded their staggering power. I want to bring in Pulitzer Prize-winning author and his presidential historian, Doris Kearns Goodwin. First, Doris, your reaction to the election results.
Well, it obviously surprised me like it did everybody else. And I think what's been hopeful about today is just listening to the speeches last night of Trump and then Obama and Hillary, a classiness of accepting this peaceful transition of power in a way that we might have worried about before this election would have happened. So that gives anybody who's on any side of this, I think, a good feeling about our democracy, at least at the moment.
As of the latest results that I was looking at, Trump did not reach the total vote number achieved by either Mitt Romney or John McCain, trailing behind by 1 to 2 million Americans. The problem was not so much a surge for Trump, but Clinton failing to reach Obama's total by something like 5 or 6 million. Was this election, do you think, about Trump's strength more or Clinton's weaknesses?
Oh, it's probably about both, but I think the hardest thing for the person who lost, which is Mrs. Clinton right now, is to imagine that it was in part about her weaknesses. You know, you think about what we feel about politicians and we somehow get very cynical about them, and yet they put themselves forward in front of the country, and the loss is monumental. Everybody in the world knows that she lost this election right now, and yet she handled it with a grace, with a classiness. Her emotions were clear within her. I mean, I know from other presidents who've talked about it, President Bush Sr. said it hurts, and President Ford said it's harder when it's close, because then you keep saying, what if I hadn't done this? What if I had done that? And I'm sure the Hillary campaign is saying, what if we hadn't had the email problem? What if we'd handled the Bernie situation differently? It's really painful, and you got to give them a certain degree of emotional support and understanding and really empathy for this moment that she's facing right now.
When President Obama took office in 2009, Democrats controlled the House, they controlled the Senate, they controlled 29 governorships. This January, Republicans will control the building behind me, the White House, the Senate, the House, and at least 33 governorships. What happened, and do you think that reflects at all on President Obama's legacy?
Well, I think clearly we're going to have to look back to that midterm election in 2010, because, as you say, the Democrats came in with that control. Health care got proposed somehow during that summer before the midterm elections. It was never explained in a way that people understood it. Perhaps there weren't simplified enough bullet points, and they were able to talk about death panels that year. The Tea Party got going. The Democrats lost that election. They lost the state houses, and then they lost the whole reapportionment that happens in that decade time. So I think looking back at that moment, that's going to be a hard moment for the party and for the Obama people to look back, even though they've accomplished so much in between those times.
I know we're just writing the first draft of history right now, and you are not a first draft of history type person. You are a years and years of research type person. But what do you think happened last night? A lot of people reaching out to people in the media saying, I didn't expect this at all. What happened?
I think if I were to look at it historically, that what happened is the country was changing in ways that a lot of people were not happy with. It had to do with the loss of jobs, but more importantly, the loss of themselves and how they felt they were part of a middle class with upward mobility, and they no longer felt that. Lots of immigrants were coming in from abroad. There was a feeling that there was a huge gap between the rich and the poor. And somehow Donald Trump told a narrative, told a story that touched those people. We will make America great again, as if somehow we were going to go backward and create a world that no longer exists. And you saw that huge divide between rural areas and diverse areas. So people who felt like something had happened to their lives were able to project the problem onto other people, whether they be immigrants or people in the cities. And somehow he was able to tell a story that made those people feel like, I'll make America the way it used to be and the way you want it to be. And that story won out over the idea of being stronger together. It's always about a narrative, and that's in a certain way how people respond to a very complicated campaign.
Donald Trump, of course, didn't just win the White House. He will have a Republican Senate a Republican House, a chance to affect the Supreme Court for years to come, at least one Supreme Court justice, maybe as many as 4. What does our nation's presidential history show when presidents have all of those other bodies on the same side, in the same party?
Well, the interesting thing is it sometimes shows that hubris sets in, that you then think you have even more of a mantle than you actually do, and you might move the country too quickly in a direction they're not ready to move in. So the cautionary thing will be that when that happens, as it did for Roosevelt in 1936, and he moved to court packing because he wanted to get everything done and he had this huge mantle to do it. So I think warnings should be there that even though it allows you to move in a way that you can't when you have a broken Congress, the one thing the country will be interesting to see is we've been decrying gridlock, the fact that neither party could get together. Now one party is going to have a lot of control. Let's see whether they use it in a measured way, whether they're able to gain to their popularity because of it, or whether they move too quickly, too fast in directions that the other half of the people who didn't vote for them are going to feel bad about. And then they could lose ground in 2 years in the midterm election. These things come in cycle. What goes around comes around.
Historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, thank you so much. Always an honor to talk to you.
Thank you, Jake. Me too, you.